Okay, so let's jump right in. There's this famous quote from Mike Tyson.
Oh, I think I know the one.
Right. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, you hear it everywhere. Sports, business. It's become this huge cliche for when things, go wrong.
Exactly.
Mhm.
And it's usually meant to say your plan is basically useless once the real world hits. But in the sources we're looking at today, this quote isn't just a clever line.
It's presented as like a fundamental rule of public safety.
It is. But here's the twist. The source material argues that the punch itself, that's not the part you should be worried about.
Which is so counterintuitive. You'd think the disaster, the collapse, that's the main event. That's the hardest part.
You would think. Most of us assume the punch is the explosion or the earthquake. But this deep dive, which is pulling from Chapter 5, how integration works in real life, and some heavy-hitting reports from the GAO and NIST.
And Miami-Dade Fire Rescue itself.
Right. It argues the complete opposite. It says for first responders, that initial adrenaline spike, that's actually the easy part.
That's just your biology kicking in. The fight or flight response. It's almost automatic.
Exactly. So the real test isn't the start of the fight. It's what happens when the fight doesn't end. When hours bleed into days and then weeks. When the adrenaline is long gone.
And that is the absolute core of what they call integration. It's one thing to be a hero for 5 minutes. It's something else entirely to be a functioning, coherent system for 30 straight days.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. How do you keep this massive, multi-agency machine from falling apart when the initial urgency is gone and just bone-deep fatigue sets in?
To do that, we have to look at a really tough case study. The Champlain Towers South collapse in Surfside, Florida.
June 24, 2021. Yeah, it's a heavy one.
A true tragedy. But we're not just here to recount the event. We're looking at the mechanics of the response. How did hundreds of strangers, local firefighters, federal engineers, state police, how did they function as one unit for a month without, frankly, tearing each other apart?
Because the default state of any disaster is chaos. Entropy. Things want to fall apart. So let's go there. Let's go to that night. 1:20 a.m., the moment of the first punch.
The descriptions in the official reports are they're chilling. It's 1:20 in the morning, it's dark. And people in the neighborhood suddenly hear a sound. Some describe it as thunder.
Others said an earthquake.
An earthquake. And in just a few seconds, half of a 12-story building is just gone.
The report mentions cars in the garage were crushed where they sat, just pancaked. We now know 98 people died. But right then, in that moment, nobody knew anything.
And that brings up the first big concept from the source, the fog of war. The initial information in a crisis is almost always wrong.
The 911 calls were all over the place.
Totally contradictory. Some people were screaming about an explosion, others said a sinkhole, some were just screaming, and then the line would go dead.
So dispatch is just hearing panic then. Silent.
Right. So when the first units arrive, they have no idea what they're driving into. It's a total information vacuum.
And what they found, the way the text describes it is just haunting.
Yeah.
They're expecting maybe a fire. Instead, there's a pile of rubble 3 stories high.
In the dark. With dust so thick you can't see your hand in front of your face.
Ah.
The report says they had to rely on shouting and tapping, just trying to hear a response.
Just to locate anyone?
Yeah. Now look at the response timeline, because this is where that integration piece starts immediately. A Miami-Dade Fire Rescue Battalion chief is on scene and takes command inside of 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
And by 1:30 a.m., so just 10 minutes after the collapse, he upgrades the incident to a full structural collapse.
Okay, let's pause on that. That phrase, full structural collapse. It sounds descriptive, but in this world, it's more than that, right? It's a trigger.
It's a crucial distinction. In the incident command system, that's not just an adjective, it's a key. It unlocks the vault. It's the difference between sending a few fire trucks and sending, an army.
So that one classification automatically sets this massive chain of events in motion.
Instantly. It triggers the deployment of heavy equipment, urban search and rescue task forces, canine units, everything. It takes the guesswork out of it.
And the source makes a really interesting point here. It says Surfside wasn't a test of speed. The help got there incredibly fast.
The resources were there. The real test was, okay, you now have 500 people standing on an unstable pile of concrete. What do you do now? How do you manage this for the long haul?
Because you can't just sprint a marathon.
You can't, and you can't have 500 people all with their own ideas. Which brings us to the next big theme in the analysis, the cultural collision.
Right. The source uses this analogy that I have to say is kind of perfect. It calls integration the family potluck.
It's a great way to put it. It sounds friendly, but the reality is very tense.
The idea is just because you brought the best dish, the lasagna.
Doesn't mean you get to run the whole kitchen.
Exactly. It's about territory and expertise. Because in a disaster this big, you have these different tribes all showing up at once.
You've got fire services, you've got law enforcement, and you've got emergency management. And the test is clear. These aren't just different uniforms. They're different psychologies. They see the problem through completely different lenses.
Yeah, let's break that down because I think most of us just lump them all together as first responders. But the source says their instincts actually conflict with each other.
They can, very much so. Start with fire. The text calls them action-oriented. Their whole culture is see a problem, touch the problem, solve the problem.
Put water on the fire.
Exactly. They see rubble, they want to start digging. Now, their bias is immediate physical action.
Which immediately puts them at odds with the second tribe, law enforcement.
Whose first instinct is the opposite. It's not to rush in, it's to lock it down. Secure the perimeter. Preserve the scene as a potential crime scene.
So one group is trying to run onto the pile with shovels.
And the other is trying to wrap the whole thing in yellow tape. It's a natural point of friction.
And then you have the third group, emergency management, who are sort of standing back and thinking about the long game.
Right. They're the planners. They're asking, okay, but where are these 500 people going to sleep tonight? How are we fueling the cranes? Who's tracking the costs for reimbursement? They're thinking about next week, not the next 5 minutes.
So you've got the doers, the protectors, and the planners all in one place. That sounds like a recipe for disaster in the command post.
And in poorly run incidents, it is. You see agencies literally stop talking to each other. But at Surfside, the reports all highlight the success of what they call unified command.
So they didn't try to make everyone think the same way.
No, they did the opposite. They let the experts be experts in their own lanes. It was a strategy. Fire rescue owned the rescue on the pile, law enforcement owned the perimeter, and critically, liaising with the families. The engineers owned the safety assessments.
But that takes a huge amount of trust and a massive ego check.
Oh, absolutely. The source is very blunt about this. It says that for many leaders, stepping back is harder than any physical labor.
I can imagine. This is your town. You've been up for 24 hours straight. And then some federal team shows up and says,
"We'll take it from here."
That has to feel like you're failing your community. Or quitting.
It feels incredibly personal. But that discipline, that ability to say, I'm not the best person for this next phase of the mission, is what kept the whole thing from grinding to a halt in a turf war.
And one of the simplest things they did to avoid that friction, it wasn't about command structure, it was about language.
Yes, the plain language directive.
Yeah.
This is a huge cultural shift.
I'll admit, I kind of like the movie dialogue, the 10-4, what's your 20? It sounds cool.
Yeah.
But they banned all of it.
They had to. The problem with those 10 codes is they aren't universal. A code 10 for a cop in Florida might mean something completely different to an engineer from Virginia or a firefighter from California.
Oh, wow. I never thought of that. So it's not just confusing, it could be actively dangerous.
Extremely. If I shout a code that means evacuate now, and you think it means send more water, people could die. So the rule is simple. Use plain English.
If you need a crane, say, I need a crane.
Exactly. If the building is shifting, you get on the radio and say, the building is shifting. It slows you down for a split second, but it ensures everyone, from the fire chief to the structural geologist, is on the same page.
It seems so obvious, but breaking a career's worth of habit in a moment of crisis, that takes real discipline.
It does, but it was critical. So, okay, the teams are working together. They're speaking the same language. Now we get to the less glamorous part, the mechanics of endurance.
There's another quote in here I love. You do not rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your training.
It's such a tough but true statement. We all love the myth of the hero who improvises a brilliant solution on the spot. But the source material is clear. Improvisation is not a strategy. What worked at Surfside wasn't luck. It was muscle memory.
And that muscle memory was built over years. These teams didn't just meet for the first time on the pile.
No, they knew each other. They'd been doing joint urban search and rescue exercises for years. They'd practiced these exact scenarios. They knew each other's names, each other's capabilities. That pre-existing relationship is the currency of a crisis.
Makes sense. You want to know the person holding the rope before you're hanging off a concrete slab.
Right. But it's not just about people. It's about systems. And the source spends a lot of time on something that sounds incredibly boring.
The paperwork. The Incident Action Plan, or IAP.
The IAP. And I know your eyes glaze over. But you have to think of the IAP not as paperwork, but as the shared memory of the operation.
A shared memory. Okay, I like that. Explain what that means.
Okay, so a task force from Ohio shows up on day 5. They're fresh, but they have no idea what's happened for the last 4 days.
And the people who do know just went home to get their first 6 hours of sleep in 2 days.
Precisely. If that critical information don't cut this beam, this void has been searched, if that only exists in someone's tired brain, it walks away when they do. The new team is flying blind.
They could waste hours researching a cleared area. Or worse.
Or worse, they could trigger another collapse. The IAP is the document that prevents operational amnesia. It's the single source of truth. It's what allows a month-long response to function as one continuous thought.
Speaking of continuity, there was a section on a very human problem. Resource hoarding.
Yes. It's a primal instinct. In a crisis, your brain screams scarcity. So if a truckload of batteries or bottled water shows up, your instinct as a team leader is to grab as much as you can for your people, just in case.
But if every team does that,
Then the central supply is empty, and the crew that actually needs those batteries right now for a rescue tool can't get them, because they're sitting under a tarp in your camp.
so how'd they stop that?
A very disciplined, very centralized logistics section. Everything came into one funnel and was pushed out based on documented need in the IAP, not on who was closest to the truck.
That requires so much trust in the system.
It does. And that trust is built during the training long before the disaster. They knew hoarding would break the system, so they trusted the system to provide.
So they've got the people, the plan, the supplies.
Yeah.
But time is the enemy. Which brings us to the final piece. Sustaining the effort when everything is going wrong.
Yeah, this is the shift. By day 2, day 3, the adrenaline is gone. It's just a slog. And at Surfside, the environment itself turned against them.
There were fires burning deep inside the rubble.
Deep-seated fires you can't really put out. Then came the rain, torrential, tropical rain turning everything to mud. And then a hurricane formed and started heading their way.
It's unbelievable. How do you lead through that when you're exhausted, soaked, and a hurricane is bearing down on you?
The simple answer is, you don't. You go get some sleep.
The leader just leaves.
That's the smart succession planning the text highlights. It's the opposite of the captain goes down with the ship mentality. The leadership knew a tired commander makes fatal mistakes.
So they forced them to rotate out.
They did, before burnout. They had planned overlaps where the outgoing commander would brief the incoming one. So the position of incident commander was always sharp and alert, even if the human being in the chair changed every 12 hours.
So the brain of the operation never got tired, even as the individual cells were replaced.
Perfectly put. And they needed that sharp mind for what was probably the hardest call of the whole operation, the decision to pause.
This part of the report gave me chills.
The engineers determined that the remaining standing portion of the tower was unstable. It was shifting. Debris was falling onto the rescue workers.
I can't imagine being in that command post. Families are waiting, the world is watching, and your safety experts are telling you, you have to stop digging.
It's an unbelievable test of discipline. To prioritize the safety of your rescuers over that overwhelming emotional need to just keep going. They had to pause the entire operation to bring that structure down safely.
And if they hadn't, if they'd just pushed on.
It's very likely we'd be talking about a secondary collapse. We'd be talking about dead rescuers.
Which leads to the one statistic in the reports that is just, it's staggering.
0.
0 responder deaths.
And 0 serious responder injuries.
In all that chaos.
For a month.
Not one. And every single victim was recovered and returned to their families. The source says that is a direct result of the discipline of integration. They didn't let emotion drive the response. They trusted the system.
It redefines what heroism is. It's not just about courage, it's about discipline.
Precisely. So when we look at the big picture, the takeaway is that integration isn't a checklist you pull out of a binder. It's a mindset. It's a culture.
It all comes back to knowing who's bringing what to the potluck before the party even starts.
Exactly. And the legacy of Surfside is really a warning. The emergencies of the future are going to be bigger, more complex. The old idea of a clean handoff from one agency to the next, that's a myth.
It's not a relay race.
It's a rugby scrum. Everyone has to be able to move the ball together seamlessly. So let's bring this home for everyone listening. What's the lesson for someone who isn't a fire chief? For a project manager, a business owner?
The source ends on a point about leadership that I think applies to anyone. Can you lead when the adrenaline is gone? It's easy to be in charge during that first exciting, chaotic moment. But what about month 3 of a brutal project? When the cameras are gone and everyone is just tired?
Can you still listen? Can you check your own ego?
Can you trust that shared memory, the plan, the documentation, instead of trying to be the hero who holds it all in their head? Can you build a system that lets you step away and rest, knowing the mission will go on?
So that's the final question for you. In your own long-term challenges, your own crises,
Yeah.
are you building something that can survive that first punch?
And still be standing for the long haul. That's the real test.